Fund. There will be a time for questions following Neil's presentation. We ask that you put your questions in the chat. We understand that not everyone is in a position to be able to turn on their video, but if you are, please do so. We encourage you to. And please make sure that your first and last names appear so that we can track attendance. And at this point, I'd like to welcome Neil Mazzella, class of 73, owner and CEO of Hudson Scenic Studios and Hudson Theatrical Associates. Neil?
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you. And welcome, class. And we have an hour, correct? 4 to 5? Okay. And how much time should I leave for the questions? Or we could have questions in the middle. I don't care. I could see the chat box, I think. So we'll figure it out. I've done a couple of these. So you're not going to get like my virgin trip on a Zoom class. So hopefully you'll find it interesting. But the way I want to start it is with a story I told when I went up to Oneonta a couple of years ago to get my honorary doctorate. And the reason I tell this story is I found out that speaking to undergraduates and graduates, particularly in this time where we're in the middle of a pandemic, that a direction forward is not really clear. It's certainly not clear for us on Broadway. We haven't done a Broadway show in 12 months now, going on 13, and it'll be another 6 months before we do one, at least. But for you, graduates or juniors or whatever you are, whatever year you're in, I'm sure you're wondering how this is going to all pan out and where you go from here. So let me tell you this little story. I did a show once with Francis Ford Coppola, and I went to California, stayed at his estate, the Inglenook Winery estate, and I went to his studio and we discussed the show. After the conversation, we got in his car and we're driving up to the house to have dinner. And he told me his story. He went to Hofstra and he wanted to be a theater technician. He's very, very involved in all the technical aspects of movies, theater, all of that. And then he saw a film, a German film, and he decided, no, I'm going to go into film. And he got himself accepted into the UCLA graduate program. And the rest, of course, is history. Oscar-winning scriptwriter, Oscar-winning director, but he wanted to be a theater technician. And then he said, what about you? So I said, well, I wanted to be a writer, and my dream was to write for the New Yorker. And then I discovered that I didn't have a voice. And he said to me, wow, that must have been a bleak day. I said, no, wait a second. You wanted to grow up and be me, and I wanted to grow up and be you. So I think we both did okay. And the moral of the story is plans change. Now, nothing's changed as dramatically as it did last March when everybody was sent home from school and we shut down theaters and we living through a pandemic. But whatever your dream is right now, or whatever your vision is, whether it's theater or writing or anything, follow it through, see how you do, and move on to the next one, because there'll always be another dream. At least for creative people, that's the whole idea. My worst day is when I wake up and I don't have a dream. And over the last 70 years, I've had several of those days. So those are the things you have to worry about. So normally you all come to Hudson Scenic and walk around and you see what we do. And we give you a little history of it. And we're not going to do that walk around today, but I'll give you a history. Hudson's 40 years old. There are two companies here, Hudson Scenic Studio, which builds the shows, and Hudson Theatrical Associates, which manages the shows. So what happens is, if I can manage a show, then I'll build it. I don't manage shows I don't build, although even that rule is being broken this time around, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So in that 40 years, we've built over 450 Broadway shows. With a legendary designer, Robin Wagner, I built 22 of his shows over a 30-year period. So you do that and you get to that point, and then you say, well, what's next? So when we did Hamilton, someone came up to me and said, well, how's it feel to like do the great show? I said, well, it's the great show this decade, but I did do the great show in the 80s when it was Cats, Phantom, Les Mis. And I did do the great show of the 90s when it was Lion King. So, and now I've done Aladdin, and now I've got Hamilton, and I've done a lot of shows. So we've been very, very fortunate. Okay. So that's part of our legacy. As far as managing shows, what we do with that is when you have a physical production, it's about 25% of the overall budget that we need to manage, anywhere from 25 to 30%. So it's the set, the lights, the sound, the video, and the load in budget, the labor to load in a show, which in our world, a union world, is the largest part of our entity. And on a show like Hamilton, which we manage and build, we have 5 of them right now. Well, we have none right now, but we will right now get 5 back up and running. We just got the calendar because we are getting calendars from the shows about reopening. And they want to open 5 Hamiltons in 5 weeks, which is going to be a challenge that we've never faced before, to open 5 shows in 5 weeks, plus all the other shows we have that we manage, like Hadestown, like Lion King. There's a lot we need to do. And, all of that automation needs to be tested out. There's an enormous amount of work to do to open up Broadway and the road once again. And that will be the challenge we face. So we've been sitting here idle since last March. And then all of a sudden, there'll be a need like we've never seen before. Now, we closed down in March 16th, we closed, and we stayed closed for 15 weeks. And we reopened on July 6th, and we reopened at 25% capacity. And we are now up to 40% capacity. So we have a lot of capacity left to get back up to where we want to be. So it's been a struggle. The PPP loans have helped get us through. We haven't had a profitable month since last March, but we're still here. And I mentioned this earlier, that I have a strong belief that when this all turns around, everybody, me and everybody on this Zoom, everyone is going to be clamoring for live entertainment, whether it's theater or concerts or anything that puts people together, even dinner in a restaurant where you're not eating outside in 30-degree weather, That's been the winter, but now it's getting nicer. But it'd be nice to eat inside and feel safe about it. We're not there yet. Now, what we think is that somewhere around Labor Day, we'll begin the openings. We have shows telling us that they're going to open anywhere or go back into the theater anywhere from August right up till opening in November. So it'll be a gradual spread out event. So depending on what show you want to see, you can ask me and I'll let you know when it's going to be back doing shows. But it's not going to be all in one day. And they're choreographing what shows open first. So, for example, American Utopia. I don't know if you know that show. It played last year. David Byrne. That was one of our shows. We managed and built it. And we're going to do it again. David wants to open again. We'll open at a different theater because the Hudson Theater isn't available because it has Plaza Suite in there, which is going to be Matthew Broderick, and they're committed to going back. So that show is sitting there. We built that show. It hasn't done any shows yet, but it's ready to go. And since it's a 2-character play and Matthew and his wife are both committed to it, so it'll be easy to get it going. And there's no automation and no special effects. David's show is going to go into the St. James, which is where Frozen was. Frozen closed and loaded out, so that's where that'll go. So that's where we'll put that one. That's going to be one of the first openings. The other one that's going to open first is a show called Six. Are you familiar with that? And that had a very large advance. And in fact, we were going to opening night, the night of the shutdown. Broadway shut down on the opening night of Six. So Six will be the first show to open, first new show to open. Another new show we have is American Buffalo. I'm not sure about that one because that's based on 3 stars, Samuel L. Jackson and 2 other stars, and it's really based on their television and film schedules. Oh, Kylie thinks that Six was supposed to be the next big thing on Broadway. Well, from your lips to God's ears, because it's one of our shows. We like when they're big hits. We were also planning, just to let Kylie know, we were planning to build another production for Chicago, which we're still planning to do. So they have a lot of hope for that show. The other show that we were doing was Mrs. Doubtfire. That will be the last show that opens because we were not in a position to like go right into opening. And that show has a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of gimmicks, and it's going to take us a while to get that one back up and running. And that one has our director, we're competing for time because our director, Jerry Zaks, is scheduled to direct Music Man, which will be another new one. Hold on. Okay. So, and who's this? Julian was going to watch a preview of Mrs. Doubtfire. Well, Julian, you could come in again. Just let me know. I'll get you in there. When we do a preview, right now, just so you know your schedule, we will probably not do a preview till mid-October. It'll be, and we're going to plan to open in November. Now, these don't trust me on that one. Some of the shows, yes, but on Mrs. Doubtfire, because I've been told we're opening in February, I've been told we're opening in November, it changes week to week. I actually had a producer, I'll tell you a quick story. Very close friend of mine, a producer, called me to say, I heard Hamilton's opening in Labor Day. Yes. Then Hamilton's opening Thanksgiving. Yes. Then he said, I hear we're now opening on Columbus Day. I said, yes. I said, if you call me next week, I'll give you the next opening day. Initially, it was all based around vaccinations. We want 260 million people vaccinated. 260 million gives us the adult population of the United States vaccinated. Now, children are about to get vaccinated. That will help us as well for shows like Aladdin and Lion King. But we need 260 million vaccinations. That's always been the metric that we're going by. So initially, we thought we'd get it by Labor Day. Then we had the winter storms, and you saw that 25 states didn't get their vaccine. So we moved it to Thanksgiving. Then the ante went up again, so we moved it back to October. Now we have the Johnson & Johnson mistake, so we don't know what that means. But we're holding our guns at Labor Day right now. But the only thing that really matters is 260 million vaccinations. So that's when we will reopen. But we are planning, we have dates, and some of the shows have gone on sale. So let me see up to now. Okay, so I saw those questions, so I don't have any new questions at the moment. Going back to Hudson Scenic Studio and a little bit away from HTA, Hudson Theatrical. Hudson Scenic, we can do carpentry, steel, aluminum. We do our own automation. We write our own programs for the control systems. We build the computers here. The computers are based on a Windows 10 program, and we use Beckhoff controls. For anybody who wanted to know all that, I just throw all that out. We also have a paint shop where we do everything except fiberglass. We don't do any fiberglass. We're basically a theater-centric shop, but we do theme parks. We've done the Met Gala, the Metropolitan Museum Gala. We've done that. We've done shows all over the world. We have a clock tower in Disney Square in Shanghai. We also did shows for the Shanghai Disney. We're still doing shows for Orlando and Anaheim Disney, and we're still doing shows for the Disney cruise ships. Now, when the cruise ships set sail, I have no idea, but we're doing quite a bit of work for them right now. So that's what's keeping us going. We also do special events. When the Pope came to Yankee Stadium, we were hired to build and manage that event. So I hired 400 of my closest friends, and we transformed Yankee Stadium into a cathedral in 36 hours. And then we changed it back into a baseball field. So when the Pope walked into Yankee Stadium, there were no Budweiser signs. There were none of those things. No Nathan's hot dog signs, nothing. Only things that pertain to the Catholic Church. And what else we do that was, we've done big corporate events like FIFA, their big event down in the Bahamas. We did that where we actually produced the whole event. We brought in the entertainment. We did everything on that. So we do quite a variety of things, even though we're basically a theater-centric shop. The ball that drops in Times Square is ours. We've built 4 of them since 1999. We're now in negotiations with those people again to build another ball and, in fact, transform the whole One Times Square building into an event space. So if we get that job, that'll be in years in the making. The Perlman Center, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's the theater that's going to be down by the World Trade Center. We're participating in that. We're building the seating rises for that right now. And for those of you who are invested in Google, they are at Pier 57, and we are building a lot of things for them over at Pier 57 on the west side. So that's what's keeping us going until theater happens. Now, the way it works is that when we do a show, if we automate the show, we then lease our equipment to the show. We don't sell the automation. The only automation we've ever sold is to Lion King. But and that was after a year of renting it. We gave them an option to buy, and they did after a year, and they own their own automation. No other show has done that. But then no other show is a Lion King. So with that, that's a big part of our income. So you can imagine losing all that income for the last 13 months and going on another 5 or 6 is a big deal to this company. So that's one of the things that is part of our corporate profile, the lease agreements. So our income is based on sales of scenery, leases of automation. Then we have our support effort, meaning chain hoists, genie lifts, scaffolding, all of that. We rent all of that to shows as well. And then we have the HTA element, which the way that works is we charge an upfront fee and then a weekly retainer to deal with the shows. By that, up until the shutdown, every morning I would get up. I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I would read upwards of 20 show reports. Show reports are produced by the stage manager at the end of each performance, and I would go through all of them to see if there were any difficulties technically with any of the shows, any accidents, any automation problems, anything breaks, something like that. All of that is my responsibility, and if there is a problem, I have to marshal my support team to go and deal with it. Now, that would be anywhere in the country or around the world. So the shows we have in Australia or Holland or Shanghai, naturally, they're all different time zones. So I'm addressing those issues in a given time zone, hopefully never jeopardizing a show because something's out. We have 24-hour call service for our automation department. So we have people on call. It's a rotating basis. So you're not the person that has to be on call every night from 10 to at night to 8 in the morning. And then there's a helpline that you go to, and it tells you what number to call, and you call it and someone will get back to you. So we have that in place too. Now, getting that in place took many years. We started automating scenery about 23 years ago. We didn't do it the first 20 years we were in business. But with Lion King, we got into serious automation, and we've been there ever since. Any questions up to this point? I got nothing in the chat room. You guys got to help me and ask me something. Keep me going. I'm going.
Hey Neil, I'll feed you real quick.
Oh, okay.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of because the way you got where you are was not particularly traditional, in terms of particularly what these guys are kind of on track to do, where you go to school with an idea of what you want to do, you learn how to do that thing, and then you go out and you get the job. Your path was a little different, so I thought I'd ask if you might touch on that a little bit for these guys.
Okay. Matter of fact, sure. I wish I'd thought of it. Like, how'd I get here?
Yeah.
Simple question. What's been your favorite project and your least favorite project? Okay, Kiara, that's going to come later. Okay. And I won't ignore that question. To Scott's point, I graduated with a liberal arts degree in literature. I graduated in 3.5 years. So I actually left Oneonta in December of 72. My official graduation naturally was June 73. But I wasn't there for the last semester because I was finished. Now, the dean of students at that time was part of the English department. So he called me into the office and he said, Neil, what are you going to do? Now, this was 1972. You don't know what it was like in 1972. You've only seen movies about what it was like in 1968. You've only heard about things that happened in 1969. I did all those things. I didn't know that these were earth-shattering things like Woodstock. I actually went to the Pentagon and got tear gassed. I actually marched on Washington. I actually protested when we were supposed to protest. I was actually part of a committee to close Oneonta, which we did along with every other school in the country that time. So by the time I left Oneonta, I really just couldn't go back to Staten Island and think I was going to do that. So I didn't know what to do. But the dean said, Neil, what are you going to do? But in my arrogance, I said, I could do anything because I've read everything. Well, that is a totally arrogant answer, which I totally said I would to him. Though I can't imagine what he thought. But then I went home and I was stuck with absolutely nothing to do. And I didn't get the job at the New Yorker. So where did I go? I thought about it, and I had read like a minor in dramatic literature. So I had read a lot of the plays, especially a lot of the plays that were happening in the theater at that time, especially off Broadway. So I went to the Bowery and started working off Broadway. And I did everything because when you work for free, you can get any job you want. So I acted, I designed, I stage managed, I did technical theater, and then people started paying me to do technical theater. Now, I was not a technical person. The only technical things I knew how to do was tune up my motorcycle. Building something out of wood, steel, welding, I didn't know any of those things. And that was the journey I began. And I did that for a couple of years, working my way from off Broadway to off Broadway. And I became aware of what was known as the Yale Mafia, which was the Yale Drama School and the people that had gone there. And I said, okay, let me go to graduate school. I know what I want to do now. And I did. I applied. I got put on the waiting list at Yale, which I let them remind them of all the time. And then finally got accepted and went there for 3 years. Coming out of Yale, I had worked continuously while I was at Yale. And I got a job at the Metropolitan Opera House coming out of Yale. And because of Yaleys, because of that Yale Mafia. And from there, after a couple of years there, I was working shows on Broadway at night. So I was working day and night. And then I got an invitation to start a shop, a 5,000 square foot building with 5 employees. And that's how it started, October 1980. So the rest is the Hudson story. Any questions on that? Because that's not, I mean, I don't know what exists off Broadway and off Broadway. I have a very good idea. I know a lot of the people down there are doing a lot of those things. So it's still a viable way to get into the business. And it's a viable training ground. And the nonprofits in town all have those secondary off Broadway theaters like Roundabout, Second Stage, all of them. Oh, did I do theater at school? The guy from Staten Island wants to know. Julian, where did you go? Where did you grow up, Julian? Just tell me. Unmute yourself. I can't hear you. Well, I still can't hear you, but I now I really believe you're from Staten Island now that I can't hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I went to St. Joseph by the Sea High School.
Yeah, that was an all-girls school when I was there. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
So no, did I do theater at school? This is a great story. I never did theater at high school. I went to Farrell, and there was a little theater program there, hardly anything at the time. But when I got to Oneonta, I took a class, and I forget what class it was, and I had to do a show. So we did the show, Annie, Get Your Gun. And it was the year that we shut the school down. And I was working the rail, doing the cues on the rail. And I would do my cue, and I would run out to the barn fire we had set up in the quad to continue the protest, and then run back and do my cue. And then at the Oneonta was chaos at that time. And at the end of the show, when we're trying to explain to everybody what's going on, Buffalo Bill, I don't know if you guys know it, Annie, Get Your Gun, but Buffalo Bill did an apron speech, a curtain speech, we call it, about the show must go on, which is totally unbelievable when you think about it in 1970, because it was the Cambodian bombings. And Annie, Get Your Gun is a great show. Yes, you're right, Amos. But it was even greater back to 1970 when you could contribute the walkouts out in the quad. So that was it. We got a couple of questions now before I get to my favorite show. Oh, my favorite project and your least favorite project. Okay, I'm going to answer that in a way that's probably not what you were expecting to hear or what you want to hear. The thing that makes me most proud and the thing that I feel is my greatest accomplishment is the fact that for 40 years, Hudson Scenic has provided a place for people to pay their rent, send their kids to school, buy a car, raise a family. That is the biggest accomplishment we've ever done. So, doing your greatest show, sure, that has a place, but I answer it a different way. If you ask me what my three biggest challenging shows were, it's an easy answer. So it's Angels in America, the original production, where we were the supervisor and the shop. City of Angels, I don't know if you know that show, a Cy Coleman musical. That one was challenging because we had just done Les Mis, Phantom, Saigon, well, not Saigon yet, but we had done Les Mis and Phantom, and we were the big shots. But we hadn't built a new musical in a while because we kept building touring companies of Les Mis and Phantom. So now we get a brand new big musical, and we were nonchalant, and we took it for granted, and we blew it, and it nearly put us out of business. What saved us was the show was an enormous, enormous hit. So that was our first, I would say, real challenge show. The next one was City of Angels. City of Angels was a challenge because it was so long, and we were not allowed to cut the show. One of the conditions of the show, and you get this, different shows, like, for example, in a David Mamet show, you're not allowed to add sound effects. Okay, why? Because David wants everybody to pay attention to his words. In Angels in America, Tony Kushner doesn't allow you to cut any words from his play. So the first night we ran it, we came down at 1:30 in the morning. We finally got it down to 11:30 at night by just moving it really fast. But by the end of that show, I was exhausted physically, emotionally, mentally. I went to Puerto Rico for a vacation at the end of that. My wife went with me, and she said, that was worthless. She just got to watch me sleep for 3 days. My third one was the production of 9 to 5, which is a little more recent. I don't know if anybody saw that, but the pre-production in Los Angeles was unbelievably painful. Again, totally unprepped for the show. It was way more show. One of the actresses in the show came up to me and said, Neil, how does a show about 3 secretaries become this technically difficult? And I couldn't give her an answer, but it was a challenge. So those 3 were my biggest challenge shows. If you ask me where I had the most fun, it's when I get to participate at an early level. Did a show called Private Lives, which is a Noel Coward play, 2 acts. First act is on the beach, second act is in the living room. And it was done in London. It was a big hit. Alan Rickman was in it. And the producer said, Neil, go and take a look at this show and tell me how I'm going to move it to New York. Because the director will not move it because he needs 40 feet deep. And we don't have, I mean, unless you go into a theater like Lion King or Wicked or Aladdin, most theaters are 32 feet at most. He said, I want to go to the Richard Rodgers, which is 30 feet. So now I'm missing 10 feet of stage for the director. So I go to London, I see the show, and what they did was they flew Act 2 and rolled out Act 1. And I said to myself, if I do this just the opposite way and put a little caveat on the table for the director, maybe he'll buy into it. So I did that. I went to London, went through the whole show, flew back to New York, met the director and the designer in the theater. And I said, Howard, I have an idea. And I mean, he was just, as far as he was concerned, he was wasting his time. He's there. He sees 30 feet and it was a 40-foot show. So I said to him, Howard, I know you want to use the show curtain, the house curtain, which means I can't build out. But what I could do is when the curtain goes up, I could roll Act 1 out into the audience, meaning the 2 terraces from the beach house. He was silent for a minute and he said, I could do that. We did it. We won the Tony Award for the best revival. We won the Tony Award for best set. We won everything. And it was a massive hit. Then, so doing something like that, where I'm contributing right out of the box is great. Another one is when you're working with really, really fantastic people. And that's what I did on Hadestown, which is a new musical that's open now. It will reopen. The whole group was fantastic. The director, the designer, and the show and the cast. Something like that is very rewarding. So those type of experiences are the big pluses and minuses that I'm giving you that kind of an answer. So to my favorite and least favorite. Hopefully that does it. There's one other question that just popped up. I remember we walked through, I believe it was David Corrins in the shop. He's always here, so that was probably it. I know as a set designer, they are involved, but the rest of the design and producers, directors, and how much are you in contact with them as you are building and managing shows? Okay, who asked? Emily. Emily, talk to me. This is a big question. What do you want to know?
I'm going into directing, and I feel like this is obviously such a collaborative art form, and I want to make sure that I, as a director, know where my place is and where it isn't, and where collaboration is met, and where other people can kind of take the reins, and just wanting to know like how involved people beyond the set designer are involved in your process, and how much you depend on their input to create what you do.
Emily, I'm talking to directors all the time. So don't, as a director, don't ignore anyone that's part of your team. Okay, what's the message here? You don't know everything that you want. Okay, that's how the show evolves. Okay, so in that conversation, like I just said with the story with Howard Davies, he never had that vision of the show coming down stage out into the audience. But if he's open to the collaboration, as Howard was, you know, a phenomenal director, it's going to happen like that. Okay. Hal Prince. I did many, many shows with Hal Prince. Let me give you this one. So one of the very famous Sondheim flops was Merrily We Roll Along. So Hal would go to Mallorca every summer and spend the whole summer there. Now, I had done Candide with Hal, and now I'm building his show, Merrily We Roll Along, and I'm in the rehearsal studio the first day at 890 Broadway. So I'm bringing in these 6 booths that are actor, you know, the actors do all the gimmicks to it. So I'm setting them up, and then Hal calls me. He says, Neil, what is this? I said, Hal, it's basically the whole infrastructure of your set. He says, come here. So he looks and he says, hold on, I'm getting a Microsoft Outlook here thing in front of me. I got to do this, otherwise I think I'll black out in a second. Wow, this won't go away. Okay, it went away. He shows me the model, and the model is all A-frame ladders and planks, not this high-tech thing that I just loaded in. And I said, Hal, I think you need to talk to your designer, not me, because this is what he told me to build. The show was doomed from that day because there was no clear, like Hal said to me, Neil, I've been looking at this model for the whole summer in Mallorca. And what am I going to do with these? He just was unprepared for that. So yes, you need to talk to everybody. And you don't have to make a point of it like right out of the box, right? But you'll go to a production meeting if you're doing a Broadway show, and there'll be someone there like me, possibly me, because I'll still be doing this, and I will be running the meeting. And then I will get to, when we go around the table, you will be the last person I call. Now, I did this with Rachel Chafkin, who is the director, and she came to me later and she said it was the most empowered she ever felt when I said, and now we need to hear what our director is going to say, because that's what's going to count. And it's really, as the director, you are really going to say what counts. Now, people like me put you on the spot and ask for decisions right away, which is unfair, but you'll learn how to handle it. So, yeah, you need to think that you need to know everything. Listen, Angela Lansbury, who is like the queen of Broadway, she knew every stagehand's name and every stagehand's kids' names and every birthday. She was like amazing like that. I'm lucky I remember anybody's name, but she was amazing. So yes, it's a very collaborative art, and don't think to be dismissive of anybody. Does that help?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions along that line about what you do when you get there? Now, how do you get there? We talked about doing the off-Broadway, off-Broadway, but there's also the other thing. So I don't know which each discipline you're all going to do. So Emily's going to be a director. So she wants to be a director. She should think about stage managing, because she'll learn a lot as a stage manager, assistant stage manager. Now, you don't want to get stuck in, because we pigeonhole people. So, oh, Emily's a stage manager, she'll never be a director. That has happened to many, many people. So you become a production assistant on a show, which means that you do everything. So you're not going to get pigeonholed in anything, but you'll learn a lot if you pay attention. And then you become an assistant director, and then finally you'll get your shot. Oh, Steve Wilson, what are your thoughts on needing or not needing to go to grad school? I'm in lighting. Steve, where are you? Tell me something. What are you doing there that makes me think you're ready to show up in Midtown? We can't hear you, Steve. What is with you guys? Steve, that's already a failure, like on Tech 101.
Embarrassing.
Yes, I know. Go ahead.
Well, I am currently not in Oneonta. I graduated in 2020, and so I'm also currently not working in theater, unfortunately. But I'm
Yeah.
hoping to swing back over.
Let me tell you something. I spoke to the graduates at Yale last year like this. It broke my heart. You go to school for 3 years and you graduate and there is no theater and no jobs. So I'm sympathetic to you. Now, the choice to go to graduate school is yours. I went out on the street and worked before I decided to go back to graduate school. So since you're on the street and you haven't worked, you might want to stay on the street and try and get some assistant work and do that. And that will really help formulate your decision. There's a friend of mine who's a set designer, Anna Louisa. Very, very accomplished set designer. Did Into the Heights, Cinderella, all those shows. She did not go back to graduate school till she was out of school for at least 10 years. I may be wrong there, but she did everything. She was a waitress. She was everything before she could afford to go to graduate school. She couldn't afford to go to graduate school, so she was working all that time. So the graduate school decision is something that I think you need to learn about out on the street. You need to work with a couple of designers and all of that so that you can know what graduate school you want to go to. I'll give you my little insight into graduate schools. You've got North Carolina School of the Arts. You've got Carnegie Mellon. You've got Yale. We recruit people, and of course, NYU has a phenomenal graduate program for lighting designers. University of Wisconsin, I don't know if you know this, that's where Gilbert Hemsley went. He was a very, very famous lighting designer. There is a big program up there for lighting designers. So if you like the cold weather, which, in Oneonta preps you for, you should look into that. Okay. So those are the big ones for lighting design. But you want to really know what you're talking about before you're willing to spend that kind of money. So stay on the street, get a couple of jobs, look into it, and see what you want to do. And because you may segue from lighting design into being an electrician, production electrician, totally different world. You don't know because you haven't had that opportunity yet. So don't rush into anything. Okay. Oh, wait, there's another question. What is this question? Oh, that was it. That was Scott's question. Okay. All right. Graduate school. The programs are usually 3 years long. They're competitive, but there also other shows that in general you wouldn't take on. Oh, okay. Now let's talk about that. I referenced this. I'm going to stop graduate school and tell you this. Okay. So back in the early 70s, I worked for a company called the Chelsea Theater Company, off Broadway. We did everything. We did Candide, we did The Contractor. There was 1 year we won the Drama Desk Awards for everything. We were in direct competition with the Public Theater. There were 3 theaters, the Chelsea, Circle in the Square, and the Public. Those were the 3 big nonprofit theaters. We were housed in the Brooklyn Academy of Music. And then we opened another theater on 43rd Street, which is now called the West Side Arts. That time it was called Chelsea West Side. Originally was the Sanctuary Discotheque. So we're segueing from discos to churches. And in 1969, renovating a church into a theater was the hip thing. So in those days, we worked at St. Clement's. We worked at Chelsea West Side. We worked at Judson Theater, famous church downtown. A lot of churches. We worked at a lot of churches. So by the time I got to Yale in the mid 70s with the Yale rep in an old church, I was a pro at doing shows in old churches. But that's all passé now. But then that's what we were doing. Anyway, the guys who ran Chelsea, the 3 of them, were all part of that Yale Mafia. So I asked this one guy, Michael David, could he recommend me to go to Yale? And he did. Michael, to this day, is still one of my closest friends. In fact, I just got an email from him, which I, will respond to him, but it's part of the story as well. Oh, God. Anyway, here's what happened. He had a show, And I used to build all his shows, and we used to be the technical supervisors because they left Chelsea, closed down. He got housed at the Public Theater for a while. And then he went out and they did a show called Pump Boys and Dinettes, which was a commercial production, his first commercial production. By then, I was working shows at night at Katz. I had to shop. And one of the partners came over to me and said, Neil, we need you back at Chelsea with the Dodgers. That's the name of their organization, the Dodgers. And I went back, and it's like going back home. So all the same guys, now they were the Dodgers. They weren't Chelsea anymore. And they were going to produce commercial shows, and I was going to be part of that. And off we went. And that was in the early 80s to mid 80s. And we did shows like Secret Garden and Big River and Tommy, the musical. We did all those shows. Now we get to the turn of the century, and Michael has this new show. Now, we've done a lot of flops along the way, but he has this new show. And I'm doing the show. Show gets delayed. So I take the general manager to lunch, and I say, Sally, I'm not going to do the show. Have a bid session and give the show out. I can't do it. We're too busy. So they have a bid session. I immediately get calls from the other shops saying, what's this? We know you're building the show. I tell them, no, I'm not, because I don't have time. Show is Jersey Boys. Does that answer that question? Did I ever turn a show down? Yeah. So I didn't do Jersey Boys because I was too busy. And to add to that, I got Eugene Lee, another set designer, came to my shop one day and showed me some gimmicks he wanted to do in his new musical. And I wished him a lot of luck. And I said, hasta la vista, Wicked. So you turn down Wicked and Jersey Boys, you've got, there you go. Now, no one is holding a benefit for me because obviously I've done a lot of shows. But to that point, one day in the office, I had Robin Wagner and Santo Lacoste in my office. They had not spoken to each other in 25 years. It was a history lesson in the American theater like you can't imagine. And Santo had two stories. The first one was this is when the Public Theater was running Lincoln Center, and he was up at Lincoln Center doing a show, and it was a lot of chaos. And Bernie Gersten called him up and said, you have to come down here now because Joe has Michael here, and we're going to do a new show, and Michael wants to do something with mirrors, and Joe wants you to do it. Santo says, I can't come down to the public now. You know what's going on up here. Call Robin. He's Michael's friend. Let him do the show. Name of the show, A Chorus Line. Santo turned it down. It gets worse for Santo. Santo is Twyla's designer, all her shows. So Twyla Tharp calls Santo and says, we're going to a meeting. We're going to meet Andrew Lloyd Webber. He has a new show. So they go see Andrew, and he tells them about this show. He's found a book of poems, and he wants Twyla to choreograph it, Santo to design it. It's going to be really great. And Twyla listens to this pitch about this book of poems and says, Andrew, I wish you the best of luck. I'm too busy. Let's go, Santo. And out they walk. The show, Cats. So my two turn downs, Santo's two, we all have them, okay? So there it is. The one other thing about Chorus Line, I was at Chelsea, and nobody had any money. And what we do is we shared everything. So I needed some gel, so I called up Victor, who was the electrician at the Public. And I said, I'm going to come over. You got some gel for me? He says, yeah, come on over. I go over and I said, what's going on here? He says, I have no idea, but it's a new show. We're throwing the set away. We're going to redo it. So the original set for Chorus Line was being thrown away as I got there. And they had to build a new set because wasn't really. They had used plexiglass mirrors, not real reflective, so they were funhouse mirrors. They used duvetine instead of black velour. So it was fraught with a lot of things, Old Chorus Line. Let me see if I got another question. I have a passion for social justice work. Any advice on how to incorporate that passion into a career in theater? Well, your timing is perfect because that is what we're doing. We're having that conversation all the time. Kylie, where are you? Talk to me. What's social
Hello, nice to meet
justice?
you.
What do you talk? What does social justice mean to you?
Mostly for like the community that I'm a part of. So I'm a queer person, so I like to
Mhm.
fight for queer people's rights. Any sort of social justice work, racism, sexism,
Well,
get rid of it.
naturally, we have that world is our world, so
Mhm.
we always have that, and we've done a lot of shows that address that. I did the original production of Talk Song Trilogy, Love, Valor, Compassion, Angels in America. Now, if you want that to fight the battle, which is different than what we do, because we do plays, but we in the theater industry have now been confronted with uh, the fact that we don't do enough shows with people of color. We don't do enough shows where, I mean, we've been accused of racism, a lot of different things. So now there is a big effort to explore diversity within our industry. And I am on a board of directors of a group called STREB, which is a very creative group of people in Brooklyn. Like, you should look that up and see what we do. And part of it is diversity. Now we have one of the most diverse groups of performers in the world, but what is not diverse is our board of directors. So we're trying to solve that. And if you followed it in the theater industry, you see that people of color are now getting their say and are being heard in the American theaters, particularly the commercial theater.
Mhm.
So whereas people like Anna Devere Smith has been saying things for decades, now it's more than that. All right, and people are listening, and that's going to change the type of shows that we do. So my advice to you is to put your ear to the ground, and if theater is what you're interested in, this is the time where that social recognition is going to happen. So this is brand new. We always thought we knew what we would do. We always thought we were liberal. We always thought that we paid attention to everybody until we were confronted with our own racism. And now we're addressing it. Okay. So if you think theater can be part of what you want to do, then now's the time to pay attention. Because
Absolutely.
that's what's happening now.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I've got 7 minutes. Do I have, nope, no other questions. So where did I leave off? Tell me something I said that generates a segue into something that I might have said, except for the time where I fell asleep for 3 days on Puerto Rico. Although we did do Hamilton in Puerto Rico, and it was a very different experience. You want to hear about that for a second? Listen to this. We go to Puerto Rico, and for the past couple of years, I've spent New Year's Eve loading in a Hamilton. So now I get the calendar, and we're going to do this special event for Puerto Rico. So for, hurricane relief. Lynn's from Puerto Rico. His father's from Puerto Rico. His father's very involved with the Puerto Rican community. So we're going to go to Puerto Rico. But what do? We load it into the University of Puerto Rico, which doesn't have a theater suitable for us. So we pay for the theater to be renovated. We do all of this. Well, there's a group that threatened the health and safety of the actual production. And in Puerto Rico, they do not bring police on campus until there's an event. So 2 days before Christmas, I get a phone call. We're loaded in. We're set up. The cast is going to fly in. We're going to start rehearsals December 27th. December 23rd, I get a phone call from the producer telling me we have to switch theaters. I take a deep breath. I call everybody, and we change all our flights to go back to Puerto Rico. We go back on December 27th and we start loading out of the university. And we start loading out on a Thursday. We're completely out of the theater on a Saturday. And we are totally set up and ready to do the show the following Wednesday. So there it was, another New Year's and Christmas. And it seems like that has a lot to do, particularly when you're involved. Like there was a whole decade where I would move shows from Yale Rep to, first we'd go to Washington, then we go to LA, and then we go to Broadway. It was all the August Wilson plays. And I spent every Christmas and New Year's in LA because that's when we would move the show there. And I said to Lloyd, the director, and the dean, why are we always doing this, ruining my holidays? He said, because that's when I'm off, Neil. So that's why we would do the shows at Christmas time in LA, which had nothing to do with my life, in New York by being in LA. So, okay, 4 minutes left. That's it, gang. That was my Puerto Rico story, my quick Yale move a show to Broadway story. And we've done that a lot. We've taken shows from lots of places and moved them, all the regional theaters. And I know you guys are all from New York because that's why you go to Oneonta, but there is theater, viable theater everywhere in this country. Okay. Syracuse has it. Anybody from Niagara Falls, I spent a summer up at Art Park doing theater up there. And then, of course, there's theater in Minneapolis and Houston, all over the country. So you could, if you could get an opportunity to work in any of those places, you should take it because it's all viable.
Cleveland has quite a theater district.
Okay, so let's go to that, Cleveland, right now. That's the conversation I'm going to have after this because I'm supposed to go to Cleveland with what show? The show I don't want to do, Jersey Boys.
Oh.
Michael's asking me to go to Cleveland with Jersey Boys in July. Okay, so I'll see if that's real. Yes, Cleveland has the largest subscription audience. The Cleveland Playhouse has the largest subscription audience of any subscription theater in the country. Do you know that? Why do you talk about Cleveland, Audrey? What's that got to do with you?
My husband actually was at Cleveland Clinic, and so I discovered Cleveland's theater district. But I have to tell you, I moved to Oneonta, Cooperstown from Kansas City, and I worked with the UMKC theater folks for the Kansas City Actors Theater. So
very good,
yeah.
Very good. Yeah, there's theater. It's everywhere.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
So Neil, I know it's getting close to the time, and I don't know if anyone has any other questions, but if you don't mind sharing your email address for the
okay, ready?
Be great.
It's NMAZZELLA. So it's N Mazzella at Hudson, HUDSON, Scenic, SCENIC.com. Now, Audrey works with Paul Adamo, who sends me emails all the time. Okay, hold on. No, Scott, you left out one Z, two Z's.
Oh.
That's better. That's it.
All right.
Kylie, you got it. Yeah, I mean, you'll get extra credit now. I'll make sure you get it. Give me a teacher's name. I'll send him an email. But my email is all over that school, so don't worry about it. Any of you involved in the Laurie Beechman Scholarship, which I created, by the way? Okay. So there's so there is a scholarship there. Laurie Beechman was my wife up until the time she passed away in 1998. So we formed a scholarship in her name. And I guess it's the actors, the singers that qualify for that. Is that the way that works?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I have the names of the people here, but I didn't see any of their names on this. So so yes, my email address is very readily available through that school. So you could do it. And if you got a question about some theater or something or somebody that you think I might have some information on, don't be afraid to write, and we'll see what happens. Okay.
So much, Neil, for all that you do for the college. We appreciate it, and I guess if everyone wants to join and giving us a, giving.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, and good luck, and hope to see you out on the street and down in Midtown.
Thanks, Neil. Hopefully we'll
Thank
get to
you
see
so
you in
much.
Thank you.
January.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Scott, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Nope, no worries.
Okay.
And everybody remember, next week we've got Hal Luftig, so come on back.
Really some gems. I
Yeah.
mean, it's incredible. You guys are so lucky to be able to visit with these folks, so take advantage of it.
Thanks, Audrey.
All
See you
right.
later.
Bye-bye.